Power to the people, if you understand, sing for me. Yeah. Power to the people, if you understand, sing for me. Say you feel me. Power to the people, if you understand, sing for me.
We are here at ALA, the American Library Association Conference, right here in the heart of Philadelphia. It is an honor to be surrounded by the people who are the keepers and the protectors of stories and the advocates for access and equality in our communities. This conference isn't just about books. It's about people. It's about the power of literacy. It's about the importance of representation and the role libraries play in shaping and sparking change. From the children discovering their first picture book, to the elders seeking wisdom in history, to the young scholar digging into research that one day may change the world. Libraries have always been a sanctuary for all, and today I'm excited to bring you the conversations that matter. Voices from the front lines, librarians, educators, authors, and activists, sharing their passions, their challenges, and their dreams for the future of knowledge in America. I'm your host, Ismail Shahid of the People's Podcast, live in Philly from ALA. Let's get into it.
Dr. Jamison, what advice would you give to librarians who are hesitant to shift traditional collection policies in favor of more inclusive practices?
I think the advice that I would give them is to look at the history of libraries. And the danger of not being more inclusive is it can potentially set us back, and especially given everything that's happening in society right now. Traditionally, when we have selected policies according to way, I guess business as usual in libraries, it was very exclusive. In terms of excluding a lot of communities. And so if we continue down that path, then we will continue to exclude voices that really need to be heard. Because again, I definitely believe it was Andrew Carnegie that says that there's not such a cradle of democracy as the free public library. And that is a space that is supposed to represent the idea of democracy for everyone and not just some. And so it is imperative for us to do everything that it is within our power to make sure that we are building collections that meet the needs of our patrons and communities, and that reflect the diverse experiences of the pluralistic world in which we live in. I know that we live in this climate right now where it's anti-DEI, but for people like myself, people who are part of historically marginalized community, diversity is not an option. Mm-hmm. It's a reality. Mm-hmm. And we have to create the space where we learn to welcome everyone, right? And it has to be a reciprocal relationship, right? Mm-hmm. That we're building a space where everyone is where everyone is welcome, and that we're facilitating this idea of cross-cultural competence and mutual respect. I think that's the only way that we're going to see a society that is truly democratic. And so I implore librarians to really, and then just to piggyback off the last question, I too have heard the comment about But we don't bring in self-published authors because of the quality of the work, right? That's just a barrier. That becomes an excuse. If we really want to support self-published authors or independent authors, then give them the space. Help them bring that quality up to par. Create those programs. Create those spaces, because when we don't do that, then we're part of the problem. I started off as a self-published author, and I ended up getting a deal with Bloomsbury Press. It was formerly Rowman and Littlefield, for my book, Considering Whiteness. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going back to being independent after I saw my royalties and residuals. So, you know, this is not just an issue about creating space for diverse voices. It's also an economic issue, right? When we don't give people who are artistic that opportunity and that space to share their work and give them that platform, then we're saying to them that you're not good enough to make a living in this field. And I don't think that that is something that as librarians that we intentionally want to do and we want to say. So again, it's imperative for us to sort of break away from those old traditions that have like been entrenched in libraries because they were rooted in systemic oppression. And if we want to change the way society and the way the world looks, I heard someone else say this, we have to be the change that we want to see in the world. And I think that librarians, we have the power to do that, because while publishers may be gatekeepers, I think that librarians are key masters. So just to give a little bit of context, I worked with the American Library Association for some time now. One of the issues that I found to be problematic within ALA, if any of you have read some of my work, is the fact that we have a lot of core values. And one of those core values is a commitment to diversity. And initially when I began to do work in working with ALA, it was apparent to me that a lot of those core values were they were written, but they weren't necessarily put into action where I felt that they made a significant difference in the life of people that we serve. So I was working on the working group. I was part of the working group, myself and some other phenomenal librarians who also advocate for independent authors. We were talking about the core values. And one of the issues that was very near and dear to me is the fact that publishing has blocked. It not only does it corners the market and decides who gets exposed, how they get exposed, but they're the gatekeepers, so to speak. And because of that, and we can talk about the history of diversity, there has been historically a lack of diversity within the publishing industry. So you have people that are BIPOC or who have lived experiences who don't get to have those stories told. So when I was on the working group, we had that conversation. And one of the things that came up consistently was this idea that if we're going to tap into diversity, if we're going to be this organization that stands behind our words and put our words into action and actually support diversity, we have to make space for those communities and for those voices that are not being heard, and that's the independent author. And if we're going to tap into unique, diverse experience, we have to bypass these big publishing houses who are not telling our stories or who do not want to tell our stories. And it's also important because it speaks to authenticity. I don't want to get into a lot of the nuances. If you want me to, I will. But there are issues with authenticity.
Maybe some of these other questions will.
Okay. There's issues with the authenticity of diverse narratives. So who's telling these stories and how are these stories being told is very problematic. So we need to go to the communities who have that experience, who are cultural insiders, and let them tell the story and give them space and promote them so that they can have the platform that they need to be successful.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Here we are, day 2, completed day 1 of 5 days of this conference, ALA conference, American Library Association conference here in the heart of Philadelphia. The conversations are good. The interactions are great. The stories are great. The writers are great. Everybody is in full swing. Everybody's in full swing. Everybody is interacting. The atmosphere is spectacular. I can't even begin to describe the atmosphere with so many people that are concentrating on education in America, literacy, and the importance of libraries in our communities. So uh, let's keep it up. Let's keep it going. Educate ourselves. Read to achieve. Read to achieve. So day 2, here we go. 5 days. Let's get it.
Will always stay the same. You're the one that I call. Bolster me inside of your love. Endless prayers I send. Accept them.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the People's Podcast. I'm your host, Ismail Shahid, Paul as well. We've made it to the end. 5 days of conference. We were at the American Library Association Conference, ALA, in the heart of Philadelphia, in downtown Philly at the Philadelphia Convention Center. And it was an eye-opening experience, to say the least. I mean, the people we met, the sessions we went to, so many different fields. You had authors, producers, so many people in the field of education and literacy to stress the importance of education in the library system. Of course, you had librarians. I mean, you had so many librarians. The one thing I want to say before I do get started is you have to understand something. And I'm going to admit something myself, that I was a little skeptic about libraries and their existence and how they fit within the confines of the community and the things that they do within the community and the existence within the community. We have to bring our families and ourselves back to the libraries. And one thing, like I said, I wanted to point out one thing is very important. We have to stop saying library. It's not the library. And you don't want to say that to a librarian because you may offend them. They are very easily offended in that way. If you use that word, and that's almost like a derogatory word, because that's just not the proper word for a library. And most of us easily roll it off our tongues and say library, and we don't think about it. So, and that little significance of the correct pronunciation of the word can bring you back to the proper attention that the library needs, that your children needs, that the community needs to uplift, educating yourselves and using the library for what it is within your community. So I do stress the importance of bringing us back to using the library, because that was one thing that came up quite a bit during this conference, that the library is not used as much anymore as a resource for education and for research as it used to be. I know, when I was growing up and I had to write a school paper, and I wasn't the best student, but all year round, I was the type of student, played around and didn't pay attention. And then when finals came, I crammed. I crammed for tests. I studied hard. I wrote my reports and did things. But, when I went to research for my my reports, I found myself in the library, reading Encyclopedia Britannica and finding my research from there. So bring yourself, understand the importance of libraries. Bring ourselves back to the libraries and do good, hard, research. There's so many ways now that, you have Google, you have YouTube, you have AI, you have all these devices and things that make it, easier, understandable. But, when you're trying to achieve higher education, these professors in these schools know when you're using that AI, when you're using that Google, instead of doing, good hard-nosed grassroots, research or for your paper or for something that you're researching or something that you're speaking on or something that you're trying to educate yourself on. The research part of it is what continues to stick with me personally, and it's my point of view, because that was one thing that and I stick on that because that stuck with me when I was young, writing my paper or doing research. But the library is about so much more than just researching papers or writing a paper or doing research. It's about so much more. It's about community. It's about representation. It's about your voice. It's about the role that libraries play in the community. And this actual podcast is going to be a 2-part series where we're going to interview the founder of Islamic Library Association, and because she's a librarian and she can better articulate and break down the importance of libraries within our communities and how it creates, a better space for our community and creates community. Because, the statement that it takes a village, that library is an important part of that village within that community. So if you think about that and it being an important part of the village, and you have to ask yourself, how can I properly use that part of my village, to my benefit, to my advantage? Because some of the things we always touch on at the People's Podcast is education again and freedom, and how if you want to achieve, the best part of your life, maybe be your younger years, your older years, you want to educate yourself. It's very important. I can't stress that enough. And I can't talk about that enough on this podcast about educating ourselves and using that to grow, our heart and our senses and our minds and our actions and changing what we do, how we developing our children. Now, I've seen so many posts for people I know, on Facebook and Instagram of their children graduating and reaching higher education. So people are actually taking this seriously. And the library is going to play an important part moving forward. Throughout history, I want to point something out too as well. Throughout history, you have to keep in mind too that when information, and the libraries is going through this right now, where books are being suppressed and banned and not allowed within the library system, throughout history. And this has been, many times throughout history, where when they wanted to suppress information, knowledge, they removed it from the books. They burned books. These are things that's been done throughout history to, remove that education part, from the heart and the minds of the people. I ran into a librarian from New Jersey, African American, black if you choose to use black. Very influential within his community. Good brother, we talked for a short time, but he broke down the importance of libraries as opposed to Google. And like we said earlier, a lot of people are using Google, for their research and their, information search. Excuse me. But he had also broke down saying that a lot of this stuff that's on Google is not vetted properly. It's 50-50 information. I don't want to get into what Google's doing and how Google breaks down. That's a whole different topic. We're not going into there. We're not trying to discredit Google at all. So we're not trying to discredit Google or anything. We're not going into that. That's a whole different topic. But, Google has its purposes for research too as well. But we're trying to stress the importance of books and using books to seek your information and your knowledge. That's the important thing I'm trying to stress. Now, when we bring on to the part 2 of this, a librarian, the founder of Islamic Library Association, when we bring on part two, she'll break down more of the importance of libraries, the system, and how it works. And I got to see that this weekend at ALA, the American Library Association Conference. I got to see that more, how libraries are trying to include programs and do certain programs within the community and within their libraries, and write different bylaws and ways to make the library more accessible, more usable, more people friendly, more community friendly. So these are some of the things I got to see, being a skeptic early on myself, about libraries, because again, I seriously, I looked at libraries, and I thought for a second that, until I walked back into the door of the library world and said, whoa, they're not dead, so to speak. They're not, so they're very much alive in America, very much alive, and very much, you don't see too many libraries going out of business. So you don't see too many libraries closing as well. And so that should speak to you as well. Like, they're not closing. So yeah, they're very much alive. They're very much alive. Let's put them to use. Let's put these facilities and they're not just buildings. We put that in our opening monologue too as well. It's not just a building. I read that somewhere within, the library conference where I was, meeting and greeting so many different people, is that libraries are not just buildings. So that's one of the important things. There's so many things that we ran across and learned during this conference that, I could go on and on about, but the one thing I've always stressed, even in my last podcast about freedom, is education. Education is freedom. It's a major part of freedom. You have to educate yourself. That's just a few things that I wanted to point out and highlight, for the People's Podcast, that can maybe bring some awareness or attention to what we're doing, and how we're moving forward, So, I don't want to. I think when we have part two, when we interview a librarian, and you hear it from the mouth of a librarian, their passions, their understanding of the system that they are currently working in the field that they're currently working in, how librarians function. I think when you hear it from the mouth of a librarian, it may resonate a little different. I'm coming from a perspective of educating ourselves, understanding the importance that libraries play, and trying to get us to understand how we can move, forward in using the libraries once again properly. From explaining how, it resonated with myself when I was a child in high school, doing research papers. But part two, when it comes up, you should keep an open ear, keep an open heart, and listen, and maybe we can all, gain benefit and learn something from the mouth of a librarian on the importance of this information highway, literacy, representation, your voice, your story, your community. That is the most important thing for us moving forward, hopefully. Because like again I said, it was beautiful seeing so many. Congratulations to a lot of people that I know, friends of mine's, family, and the graduations look so beautiful. Everybody with their cap and gowns and, so happy and, enjoying that moment with their loved ones and their families and their mothers and their fathers. It was beautiful. It's beautiful to see. So if you want to keep having that joyful feeling, and you want to keep, sometimes maybe I'm going to say, I was about to say something, but I'm not going to say that. Maybe it's too late for us. We're older. No, it's not never too late. So educate ourselves, seek higher education, and use our library. Use our library. Well, it's been a pleasure. Philadelphia, it's been a pleasure. The city of brotherly love has been very loving and very hospitable. and the conference was put together properly. So next year, hopefully, we'll see each other again. ALA, thank you, ALA, for putting on a very good conference. So hopefully we see each other next year again in Chicago and grow and learn more from there. I'm your host, Ismail Shahid of the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum.